I want to talk about the last couple weeks of AEW, including last night's Dynamite, because I must say, man, the show is improving. You know, the last quarter of AEW TV of 2023 was not that great. There was a lot of really goofy stuff on the shows, and they felt very unbalanced. But last night's episode of Dynamite, the pay-per-view was great. I mean, that was really, really good stuff. Last night's episode, Dynamite, and last week's episode, I thought were very strong episodes. I thought the week before wasn't that great, but last night's episode of Dynamite was really, really good. I was really into the show from start to finish, and the main reason why is that the show flowed. This has been something that I think AEW has been lacking in many of their Dynamite episodes. Now, I will admit to you, I do not watch Collision every week, and most of the times when I tune into Collision, I'm not really too into it. It's just not, it just feels like a B show, even though it's not supposed to be. However, maybe things are going to improve. Now, I'm not sure if this is because Tony Khan hired that WWE writer that I did the video on with the whole alleged racism thing. I don't know if she really is or not. I don't know, lady, but maybe that's why it's improved. But the thing about wrestling shows to me, okay, because I come from the old school and I've lived through a lot of different eras. I know a lot of wrestling fans that hopped on in the Attitude Era, Ruthless Aggression. Many of you fall into that category, but because I'm older, I was watching since like the end of the Hogan era, like the early 90s. I started 89 when I was like 5 years old. So I've said before that it's hard to have a true understanding of the wrestling business unless you either live through the pre-Attitude Era time or if you go back and watch a lot of it with your brain sort of understanding the time period. You have to understand. I didn't live through 1970s pro wrestling. I didn't live through that. But if I go back and I watch like a Dory Funk, Jack Briscoe match, I'm not going to expect Will Ospreay and Okada. I'm going to expect a good scientific match that looks real, and I can have fun with that. Like, you have to kind of put your brain into that, but I just love wrestling. Like, I am a real wrestling fan. I love lucha. I love Japan style. I love the shoot style. There's a lot of different variety of wrestling, but when it comes to an American TV wrestling show, what I think works the best, being somebody of the pre-Attitude Era, the New Generation era, the end of the Hogan era, and even after, is I think the best wrestling shows are balanced between angles, matches, and promos. And last night's Dynamite, plenty of promos. In fact, I think there were more promos on Dynamite last night than almost any episode I can think of in recent memory. Lots and lots of promos. There were a couple of really big angles. You had the Okada debut. I've talked about this dude for years. I mean, he's the reason why I went to Wrestle Kingdom in 2020. He's in the company now. He's a heel, which I thought was a very smart thing to do because he has so many more opponents to work with as a heel than as a babyface. And you can always give him that babyface run down the road. Not to mention that him with the Young Bucks, I kind of like this. I kind of like this little heel trio. Like, I like it. It felt fresh, and it gives a new matchup between Eddie Kingston and Okada. Plus, they're kind of subtly building an Omega Okada match, and whenever that happens, unless it's in the UK, I will probably make the flight for that show. I'll probably try and go there. I've seen Okada wrestle live and Omega, but not against each other, and I always wanted to. So that was good, but the show was very balanced. You had the angle opening the show with Swerve, that promo, Joe coming out. You had that little exchange with Adam Cole and the Undisputed. They had that tag match. There is one criticism I'm going to get to here in just a minute, but that was good, establishing Wardlow as Joe's opponent next week and kind of still building that Strickland Joe match that I'm sure they're going to have a one-on-one down the road. That was solid. The Chris Statlander storyline where they're kind of like subtly hinting she might go heel, but she doesn't like what Stokely's doing. Kind of reminds me of that Booker T. Sharmell turn from '06, if you remember that, where she was cheating behind his back, and he pretended to be mad about it, but he really was in on it. And that was good stuff. So looking forward to that as well. There wasn't much with the Blackpool Combat Club, but the show did end with a big happy moment for me. So I'll get to what I'm talking about here in a minute, but Will Ospreay and Kyle Fletcher. See, the thing about this show is that this show proved that you can have a wrestling TV show with an acrobatic, intense, like Dave Meltzer 5-star match, but not have the whole show filled with them. I think that Tony Khan for a long time tried to focus the television on the in-ring product, which is not necessarily a bad idea, but I think he went a little too heavy on the wrestling. You know, he's giving us almost too many matches. You don't want to be like TNA was in 2010, where you have these short matches and lots of talking, or like WWE was, you know, in the 2000s. But you also don't want to like have it to where it's just match, and nothing means anything. You understand? Like that was this show was very well balanced. So when Ospreay beat Fletcher, out comes Bryan Danielson. We're going to get a dream match next month at the new pay-per-view Dynasty, and it's going to be Bryan Danielson and Will Ospreay, your dream match of the month, or of the year so far. I mean, this is going to be a lot of good stuff this year when it comes to the talent. And I'm going to have a separate video actually about where do we go from here when it comes to New Japan. Because, man, New Japan is... Oh, man, like they're not looking too good. You know, not that the company's in trouble financially, but my interest level is not as high because a lot of their best guys are in AEW now full time. I'm sure they'll go back to New Japan for the Tokyo Dome shows, but what about the rest of the year? We'll talk about that in a separate video. But the Darby Allin promo was good. I enjoyed it. And then out comes Jay White. Again, one of the things that's weird about AEW is they don't have clearly established baby faces and heel lines sometimes, and here this felt a little bit like it was a tiny bit on the heel side for what Jay White said to Darby Allin. He's supposed to be a baby face, and the Bang Bang Scissor Gang is supposed to still be feuding with the Undisputed Kingdom. I'm not sure if they still are, but they're there. So there is that. They also established a match for they're taping it tonight actually, but it's going to air on Saturday. They established Jay Lethal, Mark Briscoe, and Jeff Jarrett against the House of Black. So that's happening. And again, House of Black is a Collision-like group. Like, you only see them on Collision. And really, what I liked about Dynamite is it started setting up some new angles. It continued the Strickland-Joe feud, which is probably going to go into Dynasty, maybe even Double or Nothing in May. It sort of, you know, still took time to give us backstory. It kind of built up this thing. So, okay, one of the things I like about AEW now, thanks to Ice Cube's son, O'Shea Jackson Jr., is that now they've actually started to explain stuff to the fans, not assuming that every fan knows everything. For example, there was a match on the show, Hook against Brian Cage. They did a little video, about a minute long, maybe 45 seconds long, not too long, that went into their history. Again, this is not a main event match or a pay-per-view match, but it's good to do those things because not everybody's been watching. And I'm not a fan of like the overabundance of video packages, but you want to always assume that it's someone's first time watching. You want to always kind of assume that and hope that they get it. And the best way to kind of guide them along is by doing that. I remember I told this story multiple times. Years ago, during the Full Gear main event of Omega versus Hangman, I had a buddy of mine come over, and there wasn't even a single video package, I don't remember, for that story. And I had to go over the entire story, going back to like ROH and, you know, all that stuff. Like their history, when they were tag champs and how Hangman failed to get the title at All Out 2019. All that stuff could have been told in a video package, and it wasn't because they were so focused on the matches. You gotta have video packages to explain the bigger stories. Not every single match, but Hook and Brian Cage, not really a big match, I wouldn't say, but they're building up something with Jericho. Jericho seems to be wandering around aimlessly now because he doesn't really have anybody with him, no stable. Kenny Omega's out on sick leave. Sammy Guevara suspended, so like he's just kind of like, they're trying to float him around. It doesn't seem like he has a lot of direction, but they're trying to fit him into different places. So I hope AEW continues to be good. I know next week is big business, the debut of Sasha Banks, Mercedes Moné. I was surprised they pulled the trigger on Okada on this show, but it might have been smarter to do it on this show instead of waiting for big business, because then you've got back-to-back debuts instead of cramming everything into one show like what they did with All Out 2021, because they had like 5 debuts on that show. It was like Ruby Soho, Adam Cole, Bryan Danielson, Minoru Suzuki. That might have been it. There might be somebody else I'm missing. Well, Punk's in-ring debut. So, yeah, Dynamite was good. And again, it all comes down to the balance. You can have your crazy main event with big matches. You can have like a big match, but you don't want the whole show to just be match. You want to set up promos. And now they've only got about 5 weeks, I believe, until the next pay-per-view. It's not like we have the 2-month wait from Revolution to 2.5 month from Revolution to Double or Nothing. There's a pay-per-view in April, so they might as well do what they can, do the best they can. Now, I mentioned that one criticism. They need to get rid of Ring of Honor, dude. This has gone on long enough. Like, the tag team champions of Ring of Honor losing the titles. Lost the match in a non-title. That buries the title. Because if Joe and Strickland care so little about the Ring of Honor tag belts, aren't even going to go after them, and they're pinning the champions, like, what the hell? You know what I mean? Like, what the hell? That was bad. And then also, it's weird that Eddie Kingston is going to defend the AEW Triple Crown or whatever against Okada, and one of those belts is the New Japan Strong title. So is Okada about to win a New Japan title like weeks after he leaves the company? This goes back to what I've been saying a lot about AEW. And it's not just an AEW problem. I think New Japan and even WWE may have this similar issue. There's too many titles. I think WWE's done a good job of, like, for the past couple of years, really elevating their champions to being like, you know, these long reigns, like the Judgment Day, Gunther, Roman Reigns, Seth Rollins, these kind of, you know, prestigious championships, and even Rhea Ripley. Like, that's all respectable. Like, I like the fact that you have these long-term champions, but I still think that in other companies, like AEW has way too many titles. It's just their roster is big, but sometimes it feels like everyone has a belt. And that's not even including when they bring in like other championships from other companies, like New Japan titles or CMLL or AAA titles. Like, no, like I really wish they would just keep it simple. I liked what AEW just had: the world title, the TNT title, the tag title, the women's title. That's it. And then you've got the Ring of Honor titles. Like, it's too much. It's literally too much. I think if they scrap the Ring of Honor titles, all of them, or just scrap Ring of Honor as a whole, it would improve. But also, think about your, like, secondary. You've got 3 secondary titles. You've got the TNT. You've got, for the men, you've got the International and the Continental. Like, that's like too many titles, man. Like, you could scrap the International. They're not going to, but I mean, you could, and just cut it down to just 2. I just think it's too many titles, man. Too many championships, and they don't feel as special when it's like that. So those are my thoughts on Dynamite, and hopefully AEW will continue to improve going forward. I've said it before. I hate the tribalism in the wrestling industry. I want both companies to do well. I want to enjoy my Monday nights, my Wednesday nights, and my Friday nights. I want to enjoy all of it. I don't just want to watch one week, one good show a week. You understand what I'm saying? Anyways, y'all, those are my thoughts. Take care.